welcome back.
Oh hi, I'm Marc, a professional artist who teaches art. In this week's episode of YouTube Art School, we'll go over 5 horrible art tips that you've heard and used before. You absolutely do not want to be following those tips. They suck, but what are they? Oh well, let's get this class started. Alright, class is in session. Pay attention. I'm going to go over 5 tips that might not all sound that bad at first, but that's the trap, and I'm not gonna let you fall for it. And it's the holidays, which means it's time for the biggest sale of the year for my complete art education program, along with all of my other courses too. So check the video description for the link to my store. Good until New Year's only. Now, here's the first tip. And in the background, I'll be playing the time-lapse of a painting while I talk, so you get something more entertaining to watch than my face. Anyways, the first tip you've heard before is to give up your social life and practice more. If you've ever been to a traditional art school, you've likely been drowning in assignments and homework, just overworking yourself to death to get anything done to just some level of standard. Practicing like crazy, or maybe you've just seen other artists and videos telling you there's no secret in art and that you just gotta put in the time. You just gotta put in those 10,000 hours, bro, or you'll stay a loser. All of that is just completely wrong. What? If you don't practice, you can't possibly improve. That's obvious. Except there's nuance here that makes all the difference. To learn to meaningfully apply your art skills, you need focus. I mean, you need focus to focus on anything for some period of time, enough to get results. The thing is, your focus is limited. You have a set quantity, like fuel in a tank, if you will. Every day, throughout your day, different things will drain your focus until you either run out or get to bed to recharge. And by the way, this comes straight from neuroscientists like Andrew Huberman, so it's not some magical thing, it's science. Now, you can extend your focus by taking breaks often when doing brain-intensive work, like studying anatomy, for example. But the break has to be without distraction. Checking your phone all the time or playing games just won't cut it. Because, try to remember what usually happens when you practice too much for too long, or when you're overloaded with assignments at school. You eventually hit a wall. Your brain stops being able to absorb information. The science says you get about 4 to 5 hours of focus each day on average. And that's it. Doing more studies or trying to learn by watching more videos is not going to help past a certain point once you've exhausted your focus. Like I said, we get a set amount each day that's only replenished by sleeping at night. Instead, if you know you're going to be doing some focus-intensive art task, keep entertainment and distractions to a minimum that day to allow yourself enough fuel to get it done before hitting that wall. And also, you certainly don't need 10,000 hours to get good unless you focus on all the wrong things or have a bad teacher. I made a video a while back on that 10,000 hour myth and just showing how wrong it is and how long you actually need to get really good. I'll put the link to that down in the description. So don't just practice more. Past a certain point, there's no benefit. Increase the quality of your practice instead by making sure you have enough focus left going into it. That's it. The next tip you've probably heard at some point is to draw from imagination to help develop your skills and creativity. Oh boy. What allows us to draw from imagination is our visual library. That's why it's harder to draw from imagination, maybe even impossible for some artists with a condition called aphantasia, people without a mind's eye. It won't prevent you from getting super good at drawing from reference, but drawing from imagination is basically just a big visual library flex. The bigger your visual library, the more things you can picture accurately in your mind, and the better you can draw from imagination. The thing is, you don't actually learn anything new by doing that. When you draw from imagination, you're not learning, you're just recalling memories. The only scenarios where drawing from imagination makes sense are to have fun testing your existing knowledge and finding your limits and shortcomings as an artist, or as a professional, simply to work faster. Granted, you already have the visual information you need memorized as a result of your experience. To improve creativity and just your skills overall, just like any other skill in art, you need to work off of references. Pros do the same. If I'm working on a game and need to design a medieval knight, but I've never seen any, the first thing I'll do is gather reference photos of knight armors to learn how the armor is structured, what the shape language and the designs are like, maybe what the materials look like. I'll first need to educate myself by gathering the information that I don't yet have. After repeating this process enough times, I should have a good understanding of how medieval armors are like and be able to slightly modify the design of existing ones at first, to make them work for my task. But with enough experience, I may be able to even create one from scratch using the information that I stored in my memory from studying so many different armor references. If you want to get good at drawing though, don't focus on drawing from imagination. The third tip you must have heard when you went to art school, or if you've watched a ton of tutorials online, is that you should have a unique art style as soon as possible. That's important. I actually felt the same way when I was younger. Always focused on the style because that's probably what I had read in a book then. Style really isn't that big of a deal though. As a professional artist working on projects in game development or for animated series, you have to adapt your personal style to the style of the project you're working on. Most experienced professional artists can switch between styles quite easily as a result. Style is just a recipe. Just like cooking, an experienced chef can follow another chef's recipe and get a similar result if they have enough experience. It all comes down to your understanding of the fundamentals, knowing enough to spot how a particular artist, might have deviated from reality, in what way, and by how much. Without a solid foundation as an artist, without a good understanding of the fundamentals, your style cannot manifest itself properly. Focus on those things first. Your style will develop over time almost on its own. It doesn't need your active input. Over time, you'll just pick up things from other artists, maybe copy how they treat light in their painting, or copy how they handle line weight, copy how they stylize different parts of the anatomy. Whatever it is, it's the sum of all those preferences, those personal preferences that will create your own unique style. You shouldn't rush it. The fourth tip, and we're almost at the end. You get what you pay for in art education. That one is yikes. If anything, the opposite is closer to reality. You really don't need to spend any money to become a good artist. You can find a lot of content by actual professionals on YouTube for free, and if you're a self-learner, that's really all you need. Obviously, it's not the fastest way, and not everybody is a self-learner. Learning on your own can be extremely slow if you don't have a good structure to your studies. So the best and fastest way is always to learn from someone directly, someone who can provide that structure to your education instead of relying on trial and error. But you sure as heck don't need to spend $100,000 or more going to like art center or some other art college. Their only purpose in life is to rip you off, basically. The sad thing though is that most wannabe artists, still choose the college route and a life of student debt for many. And for what? Only 14% of all working professionals have an art degree as per the US Census data. That's basically nobody. Everybody else became a pro without an art degree. So instead, if you want the structure of an art program, find pro artists who offer their own. Many old colleagues of mine, for example, or industry friends do mentoring, which can be a bit pricey, but still peanuts compared to traditional schools. And then you'll find other online programs that target specific skills. You may be able to find some good ones on Skillshare or Udemy, but my own program somehow is still the only art program that's equivalent in content to what you would get, with a 4-year Bachelor of Fine Arts, and you can get it online for less than the price of most pen tablets. That's good value. Even more so with the current Christmas sale. Check it out with the link in the video description. But, plug aside, nobody cares where you studied. Employers don't care, clients don't care, everybody only cares about the content of your portfolio. You don't get what you pay for in education. You have to do your research. Going to a traditional art school should be your last resort if all else fails. Or if it's free, I guess. Finally, I'm sure you've heard that you should study other artists to improve. Sounds like a good tip, but it's not. Not for everyone at least. As an experienced artist, studying other artists' work to figure out their recipes is a good exercise, but not until you have good fundamentals. That's why a lot of teachers, often in traditional schools, will tell you to stop drawing stuff like anime to focus on realism first. A lot I would expect are probably just ignorant, but I suspect a good amount of them say this with good intentions, essentially saying the same thing I'm saying. Studying other artists' work can actually be to your detriment if you can't catch the mistakes they make and just end up repeating them without realizing. I see this quite often with my own students and tell them the exact same thing. Avoid doing that until your fundamentals are solid. Do it as much as you want for fun. Of course, that's important too, but don't expect it to be a great learning experience. If you know color theory and you're about to color your drawing but aren't inspired for some reason, then it makes sense to study other artists to figure out, how they apply the same color theory and learn about the stylistic choices they made. In that case, it's very useful. You should be able to find mistakes, flaws, errors in every painting or drawing done by pros. Sometimes it can be an honest mistake. Oftentimes it'll be left in there just out of laziness, like is my case very often. So you want to be able to pick up on that if you're studying from it. I don't recommend spending much time studying other artists unless your foundation as an artist is solid. If you must though, I recommend you study from artists whose work was done in a studio and art directed by others. There's far less chances that there will be mistakes when it's been peer-reviewed and art directed. So I guess it's safer to study from it even if you're not super experienced. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today's class. I hope that was helpful. Let me know in the comments. Now make sure you have notifications enabled to be on time for next week's class, the last YouTube art school episode of the year. It'll be extra special.